Welcome to Moral Drift. I'm Maria. And in this series, we're going to take a long, honest look at what makes leaders stay true to their values or abandon them. Think about Richard Nixon, Elizabeth Holmes, even the fall of Enron. All of them started somewhere with ambition, opportunity, and then something changed. Why do some leaders stick to their ethical core, their moral compass, while others spiral into deception, corruption, or worse? This podcast combines psychological research, real life stories, a little dive into history and its leaders, as well as expert insight to explore what shapes ethical or unethical leadership. Let's begin with the basics. What does it really mean to lead with ethics? Ethical leadership isn't just about doing what's legal or what looks good. It's about doing what's right, even when no one's watching. According to Engel and Swagen in The Practice of Ethical Leadership, 2024, it involves fairness, transparency, humility, and a commitment to the well-being of others. And I want to highlight that one more time. A commitment to the well-being of others, not just ourselves. Let's compare two very different leadership legacies. We have Jeff Skilling at Enron, who manipulated financial data, misled shareholders, and ultimately triggered one of the biggest corporate collapses in history. Contrast him with Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and emerged not bitter, but resolute in leading with forgiveness and justice. These are two intelligent leaders, but two very different moral compasses. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about Enron. They were a huge energy company based out of Texas, and they had a severe and systemic failure of ethical responsibility. There was conscious wrongdoing, and I don't mean incompetence or inability to do their job. They consciously knew they were engaging in unethical practices. They weren't making mistakes out of ignorance. They were hiding debt, manipulating earnings, misleading investors, employees, and regulators. You had top executives, not just Jeff Skilling, who approved, or at least at a minimum, allowed scheme after scheme to continue. They betrayed trust of their employees. They allowed the employees to continue investing in their 401k retirement plans that were heavily invested in Enron's stock itself. But they knew that the numbers were fudged, and leadership encouraged this even as they were selling their own shares. They were lying to investors on financial reports that were being manipulated, and the public trusted Enron as a leader in corporate America. I mean, they were even listed as America's most innovative company by Fortune for 6 years in a row. As this was happening, their leadership was violating fiduciary duty of honesty and care. And they owed all of that to the stakeholders, as well as their employees. They suppressed whistleblowers, and there was an overall culture of cynicism and relativism. And this is key. Ethical behavior became relative. They were looking at what works instead of prioritizing what's right. Managers and traders were taught that beating the system, finding loopholes, gaming the markets were all signs of intelligence and success. It's very Bernie Madoff-esque. If you don't know who he is, totally worth looking into. He was a Wall Street guy that essentially operated a Ponzi scheme out of his investment company. And this was going on at about the same time. It was kind of like people looked at what was better for them. They were celebrating manipulation over fairness or care. And at Enron, there was actually leaked internal communications of employees joking about quote unquote screwing grandma, referring to how their manipulation of California's energy markets hurt ordinary people. They neglected their broader responsibility. I mean, they forgot the broader societal obligations that companies have beyond profit making. They actually contributed to the California energy crisis. There were rolling blackouts, inflated energy prices, and it was partly engineered by Enron's market manipulation. Their failures triggered a loss of public trust in corporations overall, and it led to broad economic consequences. I mean, in summary, the ethical failures at Enron were endless. They chose deception over honesty. They served themselves. They hid information and suppressed the truth, exploited others. And the energy crisis was just one example of how they damaged society instead of contributing positively. They failed not just because of bad apples. It was their systems, incentives, and culture combined to normalize bad behavior. Greed was celebrated, short-term success was everything, and ethical reflection was seen as a weakness. As a result, many normal people were seduced and pressured into participating in behavior they probably knew was wrong. Now we can contrast this and Enron, their leaders, with Mandela, Nelson Mandela. He arguably defines ethical leadership. He led by example through values like integrity, fairness, respect, compassion, a commitment to the greater good, even when it involved personal sacrifice. Ethical leadership is not just about being good. It's about making tough decisions based on principle, not just popularity or convenience. It's about inspiring others through consistent moral action and prioritizing justice, human dignity, and service over personal gain. Nelson Mandela lived this definition. He had moral courage and integrity. Even after spending 27 years in prison, he refused to abandon the struggle against apartheid. And if you don't know what apartheid was, it was a brutal system of racial segregation in South Africa that sustained late into the 20th century. But despite immense pressure, Nelson Mandela never betrayed his core principles, even when freedom was offered in exchange for renouncing his fight against apartheid. Essentially, ethical leaders stick to their values even at great personal cost. He exhibited commitment to justice over revenge. He had humility and was a service-oriented leader. He had respect for others and preached and practiced inclusion. He even worked with former enemies, including white leaders, to build a multiracial democracy. His vision was grounded in ethical values. And it's important to remember how much he sacrificed. He put the well-being of others before himself. So this begs the question, what is the reason for the completely different set of ethics and morals in these leaders? How do we develop a moral compass? It turns out ethics isn't just taught, it's developed. Lawrence Kohlberg's stages of moral development show that people evolve in their ethical reasoning, from basic self-interest to social norms to principles of justice. Kohlberg's stages of moral development were first introduced in 1958. He proposed that people move through three main levels of moral development, each divided into 2 stages, having 6 total. I know you guys can do math, but I'm trying to make things easy on you. These show how moral thinking matures from self-interest to principled ethics. He starts with level 1, which is pre-conventional morality. It's typical of children. Some adults remain here. It starts with stage 1, the obedience and punishment orientation. Right and wrong is determined by what is punished. If I steal, I'll get punished. If I lie, I'll get punished. If I hit my brother, I'll get punished. Then he moves on to stage 2 of level 1, still pre-conventional morality, and this is about individualism and exchange. It recognizes multiple perspectives. What's right is what serves my own needs. Quid pro quo. I'll help you if you help me. Morality in this stage of level 1 is controlled based on fear of punishment or personal gain. I'm sorry, that stage is personal gain. The fear of punishment is stage 1 of level 1. Then most people move to level 2, which is conventional morality. Most adolescents and adults operate at this level. The first stage of level 2 is good interpersonal relationships. Right is being a good boy or a good girl. You're living up to social expectations. I won't steal because it would make me look bad. And then hopefully people move to stage 2 of level 2, maintaining social order. It has an emphasis on following the rules to maintain society. Stealing is wrong because it breaks the law. In summation, this is based on social approval and maintaining societal. Now, level 3 is post-conventional morality. This is how Mandela largely operated. Few people consistently reach this level again, but the first stage of level 3 is the social contract and individual rights. Laws are important, but can be changed to protect human rights and dignity. Sometimes breaking the law is necessary to achieve justice. Again, what Mandela did. And then the last stage of level 3 is universal ethical principles. Morality is based on internalized universal principles, the ones we've talked about, justice, equality, but those may conflict with laws. It's saying I would risk punishment to uphold human rights. So people progress from self-interest to principled ethics through cognitive development. Their increased ability to think abstractly and empathetically plays a big role. Their own experience with moral dilemmas, when people face real-life conflicts where rules, loyalty, and justice clash, forces them to think deeper about ethics, whether they have role models and what the culture is showing them. Seeing principled leaders like Mandela or being raised in environments that stress critical thinking about values encourages progress. While on the other hand, if you're surrounded by leaders like Jeff Skilling and those at Enron, your moral compass could end up affected. There's also education and reflection that plays a role in people's progress. It's philosophical discussion, exposure to diverse perspectives, and ethical education, like this podcast, can help individuals recognize higher moral principles. Not everyone reaches stage 6 or the second stage of level 3. Some people stay at conventional levels all their lives, following laws or social norms without critically questioning them. That's possibly what people at Enron were doing. The social norms and how the company operated and how the culture was, they chose not to critically question what was going on. And it didn't help that those that did, the whistleblowers, were suppressed, and the information that they were coming out with and pointing out was being suppressed. To summarize Kohlberg's theory or stages, people move from doing what keeps me out of trouble to what society expects to hopefully what is right based on universal principles. And great ethical leaders operate from that final stage. Now, another aspect of the psychology of moral decision-making and its development is tied closely to emotional intelligence. I know emotional intelligence is talked about a lot in leadership studies, but it's our ability to recognize emotions, empathize, and regulate our behavior. Without emotional intelligence, moral reasoning often short circuits under stress or temptation. And I can guarantee there is a lot of temptation for leaders. Recent neuroscience backs this up. In a 2024 study in PLOS1, researchers Galvin and Sanfie found that the brain uses default emotional patterns when under moral pressure. That gut feeling you get about something being wrong, it's a real neurological response, something ethical leaders listen to. And in order for them to listen to their gut, they have to have emotional intelligence. So why do some leaders who are everyday people develop this moral compass or move forward in Kohlberg's stages, even in the face of pressure? According to Domty and Hockman's 2022 research, part of it lies in personality traits, conscientiousness, empathy, and a strong sense of integrity are all linked to ethical leadership. But how much of this is nature and how much of people's choices when it comes to ethics a part of how they were nurtured? How does nature versus nurture play a role in the ethical equation? Some leaders naturally have higher baseline levels of conscientiousness, empathy, or integrity because of personality traits that are partly genetic. I mean, we could look at Gallup's Clifton Top 5 and pull out a couple of these, but by the time we're taking this test, it doesn't mean that our leadership strengths are just genetics. They can be developed or strengthened by early moral education, cultural values, and I want to highlight this one, role models, as well as eventual ethical training in an organization. I mean, in short, ethical leadership in a crisis is a product of both innate psychological wiring or nature, plus the environmental shaping and reinforcement of ethics, nurture. Even someone naturally empathetic might act unethically if raised in a corrupt system. But someone moderately conscientious can become deeply ethical if that is nurtured in an environment that prizes integrity. Someone being given the example of conscientiousness, promoting discipline, responsibility, and resistance to unethical shortcuts, as well as empathy or preventing harm-based decisions and integrity are all key to a moral compass. Think about a time when you faced a moral dilemma. Did you follow your compass or look the other way? In our next episode, we explore how power can twist even the best intentions. This is nurture coming into play. How do people lose their way when authority is handed to them? And can they come back from it? Until then, think deeply and lead wisely. Thank you.